Okay, present tense. What we learned in Spanish 1, the concept of conjugating is very similar to what we're about to talk about with the preterite or past tense, but obviously it'll be different endings. That's what changes. Just one letter at the end of a word or even just an accent can change a whole entire tense. So just to review, your AR endings for present tense, you all you have to do is take away your AR and then add your endings for your verbs that agree with, for example, what always goes in the first box, top left, is always the yo form, okay, which is always O for AR and technically ER verbs also. But for the second box on the singular side is always tu, and then el, a, usted, or anything singular. Then on the plural side, hopping over to the right side, top box is always nosotros, and if it's not nosotros, it's anything plural that's on the bottom. So the way that you use the box is the same exact way in the preterite. So you already know half the battle. You already know how to do this. So present tense, you know your endings, and then the whole list that we used for Spanish 1, we're going to use that same list for Spanish 2. So your whole list of AR, ER, IR verbs, you can do any of those verbs. You can conjugate any of those using these endings, and you're going to be able to do the same thing with the new endings that we're going to talk about today. So that's for regular verbs. What about some of our irregulars? Anybody remember the ones that we did on our first 2 weeks that we did as review? Present tense irregulars, any come to mind? Poner is irregular in just a yo form. Was that hacer?
Yes.
Was it starting to be hacer? Okay.
Hacer
Hacer is just yo form also. Sometimes it'll be the whole box, like ir, voy, vas, va, vamos, van. Sometimes it's just a yo form, like pongo and hago. Sometimes it's a boot. Sometimes there's lots of different things that are irregular. What I want you to know starting out before we even talk about preterite is that just because a verb is irregular in the present tense doesn't mean that it's automatically going to be irregular in the preterite. Now, sometimes it is, but it'll be a whole different kind of irregular. Point being, new tense, we're now talking about things that have already happened. So instead of I speak, I spoke. New tense, new rules. So don't throw out the window everything that you already know about present tense. Just kind of push it aside for now. We're going to focus on preterite, past tense, to make sure that we know what happens with those verbs. So for now, until I tell you otherwise, treat everything like a regular verb that follows the pattern of preterite tense. And if I tell you that it's irregular, then I'll tell you what's irregular about it, what's different, why it doesn't follow the pattern. For now, just follow the pattern for anything and everything until I tell you otherwise. Okay? So preterite tense on page 282 in your book, in the Spanish 1 book. If you want to know more information about it, you can look there. These are your new boxes for preterite tense. For AR verbs, you conjugate it the same way. You're going to drop your AR. And you're going to, for the yo form, replace it with E with an accent. Then for the tu form, drop the AR, add ASTE. And so on. O with a very clear accent. And nosotros form is AMOS. Yes, it happens to be the same AMOS that we have up here. So how will you be able to tell the difference if that AMOS, if it's attached to the end of a verb? How will you know if it's present tense or preterite tense? What would let you know? Right, the other words around it in the sentence or key words. Like, for example, if I said, yesterday I speak, you know that doesn't sound right. That doesn't go together. So if you see like the word yesterday coupled with something, and we're going to talk more about those.
Do we need that middle one?
You don't need the... technically not. You don't need to write these down if you don't want to. But it's always helpful to know what they are in case you ever need it as a reference and you happen to have these notes.
Well, we're not going to be tested over it, right?
You're not. Not for this class, correct. So AMOS is the same, and then ARON for anything plural for AR verbs. Now notice that your ER and IR verbs are exactly the same box. That means that in the present tense we did have EMOS with IR verbs, but with ER verbs. We no longer have EMOS. We just have IMOS. So you don't even have to worry about like something slash something. It's the same exact box. I with an accent, ISTE, IO. Make sure that accent's on the O, not on the I. Then IMOS and IERON. Not ERON, not IRON, IERON for both. Anything plural. That's not nosotros. Okay. So that covers any AR, ER, IR verb. This is the pattern for regular verbs. Technically, your book mentions this a little bit differently than how I have it. I think your book makes it more confusing than it has to be, but there is a spelling change pattern that happens, and because it's a pattern that happens to more than one verb, we're going to call it still a regular verb. We're just going to remember this one weird thing about it. Now, when we did verbs that were irregular just in the yo form, like poner and hacer in the present tense, like pongo and hago, those are technically irregular because you were just remembering that for that verb. Now there's a pattern to remember for any verb that ends in CAR, GAR, or ZAR. So once you look at your list and you look at GAR, CAR, or ZAR verbs, I call them caracterizar verbs, just so you know if I use that term. That's what I'm talking about. Any verbs that end in CAR, like buscar. Any verbs that end in GAR, like navegar. Any verbs that end in ZAR, like organizar. Obviously, they're all going to be on your AR list because they all end in AR. So, only for the yo form. Write a big note on your paper. Only for the yo form will you change the pattern, basically. So, instead of using your regular E for the yo form, you're going to drop your whole CAR, you're going to drop those 3 letters, and you're going to replace it with QUE. Now, that E happens to also have an accent because it happens to be the yo form accent, so that will still stay there. Any other verb that has a GAR at the end of it, only for what form? Only for the yo form. You'll change the whole GAR, drop 3 letters, replace it with GUE with an accent again. And verbs that end in ZAR happen to be a little bit different because you're going to drop 3 letters, but you're only going to replace it with 2 letters, CE, with an accent. Okay. So technically, these will be mixed together with any of your other regular verbs. So I just want you to know this together because AR, ER, IR verbs and caracterizar verbs, which happen to be part of your AR verbs, will be all mixed together by the end of the week. Okay. For today, though, we're only going to focus and practice on AR preterite. So we're going to practice a few boxes in the present tense just to review, and we'll see what happens with those same boxes in the preterite to see if sometimes we need to worry about the caracterizar. For now, nothing else is irregular. This is it. These 2 new boxes, and then caracterizar will start being mixed together.